So now we're going to talk a little about Seder Taras Niddah. I don't know if you got a chance, David, to copy number Gimel, but you still have base. So we're on page base, in the middle of the left column. He says, Shivas Yimei Nidusa passed. As we said yesterday, the Torah needs the 7 days, no matter how much dam she saw or how frequently she saw. She had one re'iyah during Yimei Nidus, and that covers her and upgrades her status to that of a Niddah for all 7 days. Now, in order to end that tumah of Niddah, which we said is a twofold tumah, it's tumah l'bayla and tumah l'inyan mishkav moshav and merkav and so forth, she needs to determine with certainty that she's no longer seeing dam. So that's called mafsekes b'tara. And again, we're going to have to learn a lot about hefsek tara. But now, when does she go to the mikveh? Toveles l'shmini. Now, I'm going to just take a stab at this, and we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. But Toveles b'shmini could mean leil shmini. You follow what I mean? Or l'shmini. She doesn't have to wait till the day of shmini. We'll see if that's correct. So I'm saying, v'ravon mukbal. Anida hi b'cheskas tumah, ve'ene yechola litbal b'shmini, elam kein ifsika b'tar. And the rush vacillates, as you'll see in footnote number Yud Gimel, whether or not this is a doraisa or a derabon. So he says that later on in this introduction, we're going to talk about this locus. I would like to assume that hefsek tara in this case is doraisa. That would be my intuition, if I had to take sides in this machlokes. This I don't understand. Oh, I see what he means. Bishivas, not kol shivas. I misread it. And I was taken aback here because of my mistaken reading of the text. He doesn't mean kol shivas yom. He means bishivas yom. Now, what that could mean is that, let's say she saw dam on day 1, and immediately afterwards she made a hefsek tara. All right, we'll see the machlokas here, but that could be feasible. That would be sufficient. Why? Because once she has a hefsek tara, even after her first re'iyah, she's already established herself as what's called a mayan sosa, meaning that she has stopped seeing dam. So we need one bedika. When does it have to take place? The Yeshmin Arishonim. Okay, so the Rishonim have a machlokas how to interpret these various sheets in the Tanoim. And he starts with Rashi. That Arba Deos B'Davar. According to Rashi, there are 4 different opinions amongst the Tanoim. And we're going to see on the next page that there are other Rishonim who have less than 4 sheets. But Rashi has as many as 4 shitas in the Rishonim. Das Tanakama, Das Rabbi Yehuda, Das Chachamim, and Das Rebbe. So according to the Tanakama, the hefsek tara takes place on the morning of the 7th day of Nidus, which I guess means that once you get to the 7th day, we can apply the principle of Miksayom Pikulo. It's as if all 7 days of her Nidus have passed, and she's ready to do a hefsek tara. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that's opinion number 2, Elamiyom Ashvi Bein Hashmashos. He's not going to apply the principle of Mitzvah Yom Kikulo. He wants to see that the Hefsek Tara was at the end of that day, such that 7 days have passed, and we don't assume that she will continue seeing Nidus into day 8. And in order to ascertain that with absolute certainty, we need a Hefsek Tara. Now, exactly when is Bein Hashmashos, that's going to be a whole issue. Now we have Das Chachomim. Yichol lahafsik v'tara miyom sheni b'boker. You just have to wait 1 day. In other words, the Chachomim view the Nidus as a Vadai Nidus during the entire day, that first day when she had a Re'iyah. It's an entity called a Yom. So she has to establish a Hefsek Tara after that Yom. That Yom is, so to speak, out of the picture. You know, if she makes a Hefsek Tara during that first day, it means nothing, according to the Chacham, because she'll still see Dam even after the Hefsek Tara. She needs a Hefsek Tara after the time period passes when we assume she's going to be seeing Dam. Otherwise, if she makes a Hefsek Tara in the middle of that period of time, of interval of time when we assume she's seeing Dam, then the Hefsek Tara is meaningless, because the assumption would be that even after the Hefsek Tara, she saw Dam. So if we take, for example, in a certain sense, the clearest sheet of all is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that for 7 days, the Torah considers her a Niddah. It means that for 7 days, the assumption is that she'll see Dam, or she might see Dam. So a Hefsek Tara in the middle of the 7 days is meaningless. So Rabbi Yehuda says, let's postpone the Hefsek Tara to the last moment at the end of the 7th day. And the strange thing here is that the Tanakama applies the principle of Mitzvah Yom Kikulo, saying that, you know, it's as if the entire 7th day has passed. Now we have the Das Chachamim, and they want to focus on 1 day. 1 day as an entity is when she has a Mayim Pasuach, and we assume that she's going to see Dam, and therefore Hefsek Tara in the middle of that day is out of the ballpark. Then we get to Rebbe, Yechol Hafsik Ap Yom Rishon, which sounds like we don't even consider the day as a unit. Now, the language here is a little bit confusing to me anyway, because what do you mean Af Yom Rishon? Does it mean immediately after she saw the Dam? I'm going to make that assumption. Again, it's a leap of faith on my part. Now, let's take a look at footnote number Tes Zayin. He says, Kama Shitos Proposkim, what is exactly Beit Hashmashos for a Hefsek Tara? One Shita is Mitchilas Zman Mincha Ktana. Right, so Mincha Ktana is halfway between Mincha Gedola and Shkia. So let's say Mincha Gedola was at 12 noon. I'm just throwing out a number. And Shkia is at 6 p.m. So Zman Mincha Ktana would be at 3 p.m. Now we have a second sheet. And that is Samach Lebein Hashmashos. Which I think means that the sun is still above the horizon. It hasn't yet set. Now we have the third shita, the Bein Hashmashos Atz, which means that the sun has set, but there's still light on the horizon, right? The sunlight is reflecting light on the horizon, even though it dipped below the line of the horizon. And this last shita, honestly, and again, I say this with limited liability, this reminds me a little bit of Rabbeinu Tam. Because Rabbeinu Tam wants to consider the day to extend even beyond Bein Hashmashos until it's absolutely dark. Let's call it Tzeis HaKochav, for argument's sake. So during that period of time, after the sun sets, but the stars have not come out, there's still reflected light on the horizon, according to Rabbeinu Tam, that's still young. But there's one sheet that says that's already Bein Hashmashos. And once the sun sets, I don't care how much light there is on the western horizon, it's already considered that the day is gone. That's already sunset. So all told, how many shitas do we have? 3 shitas. One shita is Mincha Ketana. The other is Sofsmana Mincha. So wait, I skipped. You caught it, I skipped it. What's Sofsman? Oh, no. I think Sofsmana Mincha means Samach L'Bein Hashmashos. I think there are only 3 shitas. So let's go over the 3 shitas. One is Mincha Ketana. The other is Samach L'Bein Hashmashos. And the third is after sunset during Bein Hashmashos. Oh, maybe the Rashba is a 4th shita. Let's see. Li olam yei adam melami b'tov beiso shetei isha bodekes atzma yom hefsek tarasa b'moch doch. Oh, v'yesh sham kol Bein Hashmashos shezu abedika motzia mikol safek. It seems to me, I may be wrong here, that the Rashba is excluding the first shita when I mean, no. I think he's excluding the first sheet because the first sheet that says, let her do a hefsek tara b'mincha ketana. He's requiring a hefsek tara that carries her all the way until the end of Bein Hashmashos. The first sheet that says, no, let it just do a bika during the time period of Zman mincha ketana. Now let's see the second sheet. The second sheet that says, some of the Bein Hashmashos. The Rashba.
He's saying actually in Bein Hashmashos.
Right, the Rashba might be accepting some of the Bein Hashmashos as the beginning of the hefsek tara, but that's not sufficient.
No.
He's not satisfied with some of the Bein Hashmashos. Now let's take the third sheet. The third sheet that says Bein Hashmashos atzma. And I have a feeling the Rashba is rejecting even that third sheet. He wants to begin the hefsek tara at the beginning of Bein Hashmashos and continue that hefsek tara until the end of Bein Hashmashos.
Isn't that the same as the third sheet?
I'll tell you where I think it's different than the third sheet. The third sheet that doesn't want to begin the hefsek tara until after we begin, we shoot the starting gun of Bein Hashmashos. Until Bein Hashmashos, we don't want to accept and validate a hefsek tara. The Rashba is saying that you can begin the hefsek tara already at that point. What do I mean to say? What would the third shita say about the Rashba? If you have a most awkward
I think the third shooter is saying it's really checking managed moshes. You have to leave the whole managed moshes. And I was saying you're going to leave there the whole managed moshes.
It seems to me, and I don't know if we're both saying the same thing, that according to the third shita, you don't have to leave it there the whole Bein HaShmosh.
That's right.
The third shita is saying you have to do a hefsek tara during Bein HaShmosh, and not before Bein HaShmosh. So the Rashba is the chumrah that he requires a bedika that's a continuous bedika called the mochach during the entire Bein HaShmosh. But what I'm trying to rack my brains, is it possible that the third shita would reject the hefsek tara of the Rashba?
Why?
Because he doesn't want to begin before Bein HaShmosh. Maybe there's a problem in beginning before Bein HaShmosh. The Rashba is saying that in order to guarantee that the entire Bein HaShmosh is included in the Hefsek Tara, you have to start the Maisa Hefsek Tara before Bein HaShmosh. Let's say Bein HaShmosh starts at 7. Right? Let's say the sun dips below the horizon at 7 p.m. Just throwing out a number. The Rashba wants you to already have the most dachuk in at 1 minute before 7. And I'm just wondering if the third shita might reject that because he started too early. You follow my point? But I don't know.
He's not saying that the rational segment is saying that Kol Ben HaShmosh.
Right, but in order to achieve Kol Ben HaShmosh, you have to start at 1 minute before 7. Because if you start at 7, then there might be part of Ben HaShmosh that's left out of your Mochtach. I don't know. Not sure. See, I'm not sure if this halach of Hefsek Tara generates dinim in the Maisa, that when she puts it in, she puts in the moch. Or no, it's just a matter of clarification. If the moch is there, the entire Ben HaShmosh, and there's no dam on it, that's clarification is 1,000%. But maybe there's halacha here, again, it's just a figment of my imagination, that the Maisa of putting in the moch, it's also a Maisa of Hefsek Tara. And there are dinim that apply to the mice. Like, what would the Rishonim say if, let's say, and if you can imagine a situation where she saw a Riyah on day 1 and immediately put in a mochtach and left it there for all 7 days. L'chora kal kolshke, that should be fine, right? That would clarify beyond the shadow of a doubt that certainly she did not see any down the entire 7 days, just that first Riyah. Again, I don't know, from a hygienic perspective, if that's a healthy thing to do. I don't know. But the Mitzias, physically, it seems like it should be a possibility, logically. But I'm just not sure if we're going to allow such a thing. Because we want to make sure that you start a process of Hefsek Tara, which is the Maisa of putting the moch in, at the right time. And from the Rashba's perspective, in order to guarantee that the entire Bein HaShmosh is naki with a Hefsek Tara, you're going to have to do the Maisa Hefsek Tara before Bein HaShmosh. And I'm not sure if the other Rishonim are going to allow that because they want a Hefsek Tara during Bein HaShmosh. All right, so at this point, you don't have the photocopy. We have 2 choices. We can either take a break and we'll copy this. I think that's the best idea. So let me just pause this for a moment. So we're now on the top of Gimel. Yesh min harishonim hasover. He attributes this to Tosa Rosh. Shtei deos b'dom. We had 4 different opinions according to Rash. Now, according to Tosa Rosh, there are only 2 opinions. Das Rabbi Yehuda, which we said that it's got to be at the very end of the 7 days. That's when she makes the Hefsek Tara. She'ein mol hefsek ela miyom hashvi bein hashmoshes. Das Tanakama v'chachamim v'Rebbe. But all the other Tanoim that we had presented according to Rashi as 3 different shitos, they all agree. Shemoel hefsek af miyom harishon. It's either all or nothing. Either you say that once she does one Hefsek Tara, one Bedika, she's changed her status. The chazaka that you will see beyond that Hefsek Tara is completely gone. We assume she had 1 Re'iyah and that's it. And we're not going to assume that tomorrow on the 2nd day, etc., she sees down. she's already changed her chazaka, or no. She's liable to see dam during the entire 7-day period, and therefore the hefsek tara is only meaningful, that's Rabbi Yehuda Shita, at the end of the 7 days. So all this business about Yom Sheni as opposed to Yom Rishon, or we had one sheet according to Rashi of Yom, right? So we had Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni. So we're wiping off according to Rashi Yom Sheni, and we had Yom Shvi Baboker. That was the Tanakama according to Rashi, which now we're rejecting. So there's no such thing as Yom Sheni Baboker. That sheet that doesn't exist. I'm sorry, Yom Shvi Baboker. Next, Yeshu Rishonu Kosev She'afa Sovich Emor Lefsik B'Shachris Lo Omar Kain Ella Im Lo Rasa B'Oso Yom Shachris. I know she saw yesterday she could do Hefsek Tara tomorrow because on that day tomorrow she didn't see any dam. Achim Rasa B'Oso Yom Shachris Eino Mol Hefsek Sheni B'Oso Yom Shachris Ela V'Vein Hashmashis, meaning we take the day as a unit, indivisible, it's an entity unto itself, and that day was a day of Re'iyah, and that day is B'cheskas Roa. Tomorrow is a new day. And if she makes Hefsek Tara tomorrow, then we assume Mayan Sasum, she's no longer seeing Dam. Lo Ifsika Ubodka Achrei Kama Yom. So let's say the 7-day period passed, and she never did a b'dika, which was a mistake. But whatever it is, she couldn't do a b'dika. She didn't know to do a b'dika, whatever the case might be. So now let's say she's on day 10. It's been 10 days since she saw the first Re'iyah, and she became a Niddah. Whoa, bad news. Thumbs down. She failed the test. On day 10, she saw dam. Now, intuitively, as a knee-jerk response, we're going to have to assume she was a Niddah for all 10 days. The Torah, on the other hand, says that she's a Niddah for 7 days, which might mean that her chazaka changes automatically after 7 days. Even in the absence of a hefsek tara, at least on a doraisa.
We don't call Ziva then? We don't call it Ziva? She's a Zava?
Yeah, so let's just see. Probably, you're right, if it's after the 10th day, then it's 8, 9, and 10, or you may Ziva. Or do we say no? Her status as a Niddah continues, and the Yemei Ziva only begin after the 10 days. Let's see it inside. You know, Nechleku Amoran. Imi Zava Gedola, because she saw, the assumption is she saw days 8, 9, and 10. That makes her into a Zava Gedola. Shadow Omrim Sharasa Kol Osam Yom. There was never Yom Nakul. She started on day 1. She has a chazaka that she will see every single day until she can get a hefsek tara, including therefore days 8, 9, and 10 in this scenario. Shano omrim sherasa kolosum yomim shemin sof yemei nidus ad habedika. So she left the state of nidus and she entered into the state of ziva, as David said before. Varei rasa Gimel Yomim Ritzufim, I would add the word B'Yemei Zivasa. And that makes it to Zava Gedola. Oh, now we have a different cheat amongst the Amoraim. He doesn't give you names. She'ena Ela Zava Gedola Misafek. We don't assume a chazaka that she saw every day in between the first Riyah and the Hefsek Tara on day 10, so that she saw it on days 8, 9, and 10. We don't assume that. Elami Safek. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But there's no chazaka that definitely tells me and determines that she saw on days 8, 9, and 10. Okay, now we get to the opposite scenario. She failed to make a bedika at the end of 7 days. She made a bedika at the end of day 10, and Baruch Hashem, she passed the test. Is therefore the Divrei HaKol Eino Ela Zava Misafek Shema Rasa Ad HaBedika. Oh, this is a big chumrah that we didn't anticipate. She had a bedika v'tara, but what was her situation before the bedika? We're going to assume, Pesafek again, that she saw dam up to the moment she made the bedika. From the moment of the bedika on, she establishes herself as Mayim Sasum. She gets a chazaka that she doesn't see dam, but only from the bedika on. Did she see dam before the bedika? Well, that's called a chazaka the hashta. Right? There are two chazakas. One chazaka goes forward in time, and another chazaka goes backwards in time. And a chazaka that goes backwards in time is always weaker than a chazaka that goes forward in time. So, for example, if let's say a Tomei jumps into a mikveh on day 1. Let's call it day 3 on a Tuesday. We checked out the mikveh on Sunday. It was perfect, 40 saw. It had the amount. Now we check it out on Wednesday. He went to the mikveh on Tuesday, and it's chassid. It's only 39.9 saw. So the first chazaka that was established on day 1 on Sunday, that tells me that when he went into the mikveh on Tuesday, it was kosher, it was mullet. That's called a chazaka lahabo. So we go from Sunday and we assume that the situation didn't change and remains the same status quo. Then we have a situation now on Wednesday when we check the mikveh, lo and behold, it's chaser. That establishes a chazaka dahashta, which means that whatever is now was also yesterday, going in the opposite direction. The second chazaka, which goes backwards in time, is weaker than the first chazaka. And therefore, this case, he's the cheskes Torah. On Wednesday, we find that the mikveh is disqualified, but it doesn't matter because the mikveh was established as kosher and status quo until we know otherwise. So it's only from the time of the new bedika on Wednesday and Chala, that's when we say anyone who jumps in there is still tummy. He's not done. But anything that came before that falls onto the chazaka beikara, the original chazaka, and we can assume the mikveh was moli at the time of his tefillah. He's tough. Now, watch what happens with the hefsek tara. On the one hand, at the beginning of this period, day 1, she saw dam. That gives her a chazaka that she'll continue to see dam. And that's a chazaka, the meikar, that goes towards the future. Now on day 10, she has a cheskas tahora. She did a hefsek, and Baruch Hashem, no dam. That creates a chazaka that goes backwards and tells me that until I know for sure she had dam, then I assume she didn't have dam, because today she doesn't have dam. Now you pit, or what's a good word? You pit one chazak against the other. I don't know what the word, I use the word to pit it one against the other, right? We're left with a suffix. Even though the original chazaka is greater than the chazaka now, but the first chazaka of dam is a weak chazaka for a different reason. For an extraneous reason, an external reason. And what is that? It's a chazaka real ishtanas. We know that her situation will change. She's going to eventually stop seeing dam. But that chazaka is still powerful enough to tell me that if at any point we assume she had down, until I get a cheskes tara. Now that I get a hefsek tara b'tara, now I have a chazaka that goes the opposite direction. And although normally the first chazaka trumps the second chazaka, but in this case, because the original chazaka was real ishtanos, therefore the new chazaka has power to go backwards. And therefore, with regard to days 8, 9, and 10, which had she had a re'iyah, if we would have known about that, with certainty she'd be a Zava Gedola. In this case, she's a Zava Midin Suffolk. Because we have one chazaka pitted up against the other chazaka. It's therefore the divrei hakol eino ella Zava misafek. And this leads us up to Tefillah. We haven't gotten to any of discussions about when exactly she goes into the mikveh. So that, if it's Hashem, we would pick up tomorrow. That's tomorrow's Wednesday, so I'll just make a note of it. And I have to fix the binding here. Okay.